I didn't need to be in here no ways. Y'all better count your lucky stars. The patch came out and you passed the World of Warcraft.
This should be quiet. You mute my mic. I'll see the thing.
Hello, peoples. It's time. This is Tempest Tenebrarum, home of all things World of Darkness. We are here every other Tuesday, sitting around and bullshitting about our favorite role-playing game. Sorry, I'm your host, Peter, and of course, my man, Eric, as my co-host.
Yeah, hello. Sorry, you got into it, man, so I had to clouse.
I know, I did. No, I watched the sequel to Rocky Horror Picture Show last night, and I'm just feeling the whole Bert Shrek thing.
Yeah,
Bert
exactly.
Thing.
Bert is awesome. All right.
Bert is the shit, dude. And tonight we have with us, hold on, let me pull up all the information because I am just completely losing my mind. We have Brother Ken. Say hi, Ken.
Hi, Ken.
And Brother Kyde, who's joining us for, I think, the second time.
Yes, it is the second time.
And Brother Thomas, who has been with us for some time now, and we love him dearly.
And I am your devil's advocate for the evening.
Thank you, because we're going to need one. Tonight's show is about controversy. I'm not specifically talking about one thing, although we will probably be talking quite a bit about the one major controversy of late. But I also want to discuss a few other controversies where, you know, and I don't want to come across as a complete douche, but I want folks to understand that not everybody is happy with how you play. So, we're going to go do with that, and I want, so, Brother Eric, do your job, dude.
All right, so normally this is where I just, throw out a first question kind of thing, But I'm going to just start off by touching a little bit and then kind of moderate things a little bit, or, just kind of...
I like it when you start by touching a little bit.
Oh, yeah, that's true. But, out of every role-playing game, and I know some of you guys really watched that video, that live thing I did, but... White Wolf historically has pretty much tackled about every controversy you can actually think of in whatever, social time it has been in. And as of late, with the way, I suppose, our current, for a better way of putting it, social environment has caused some issues. Basically, historically, White Wolf has given the finger to every controversy. And in this case, some different things have happened. So there's basically both sides of this thing. Those who are upset by things that they read, and those that just kind of take things as they roll. But we're going to just start going through and talking about some of the different controversies that have come up over the years. So one controversy I want to start off with, I guess, is... I'm not sure if you guys remembered back in the late 90s, I think it was, early 2000s. Yeah, it was late 90s when there were a guy and his girlfriend killed her parents and drove around with their friends and stuff like that. There was a bunch of murders, and
they started right here.
yeah, and at that point in time, the game had been going for a while, and I had been running LARP at the University of Texas with the Camarilla fan club, and I remember having to because they initially blamed the murders on the game because they were playing it and they couldn't tell the difference between fantasy and reality.
Jonathan, what was his name?
There's been a couple. It's really weird to watch.
I know which one you're talking about, and yeah, they started here in Tracy City.
Yeah, it was almost like starting with that. It started hearkening back to the early days of D&D and when I was a kid and having to deal with Satan worshiper. But it was that whole thing over again. And now we're in another kind of, in my opinion, thing of that, but just different. But so let's start with that controversy. I don't know if you guys remember that. But how would you guys? Let's start. I guess whoever wants to go first. How would you think if you hadn't, or you would deal with something like that? I mean, thoughts, concerns, comments.
So if I remember correctly, his name was Roderick Justin, known as Rod Farrell.
No.
Yeah.
That must have been another one, but there was a vampire dude here in Tracy. His first name was Jonathan something or other, and he took a whole bunch of teenage girls with him when he left here.
Yeah, that's who he's talking about.
Yeah, oh, no, but... Okay.
That's his name.
All right, my bad.
There may be different ones. I just know this one, him and a group of teenagers in Murray, Kentucky is where they came from. So that's the other thing, is we have to decide, we have to figure out which controversy is which and which ones are we talking about. Rod Farrell's the big one. That's the one who makes it even into the Onyx Path, the White Wolf documentary.
Yeah.
Was Rod Farrell.
Mm-hmm. That's who I'm talking about.
So, I mean, when talking about a controversy like this, we have to remember a long-standing trend in the U.S. has been, if something goes wrong, blame the media. Blame it on the violent music. Blame it on the violent video games. Blame it on the violent role-playing game. It's par for the course in the United States. I mean, we still have people claiming violent video games makes people violent, but the research has never shown that. We see temporarily increases in aggression, but aggression does not equal violence. So when talking about this sort of thing, we have to ask ourselves, what really is the context? What made Rod Farrell do what he did, and was it something like mental illness and he couldn't tell the difference? But if that were the case, he would have been found innocent due to insanity, but he was found guilty. So it was shown in a court that he wasn't crazy, or he wasn't by legal definition insane. He knew what he was doing. So it seems to me the vampire thing is simply a cover he used, and some people bought it and ran with it in the media when they should have dug deeper.
Yep.
Come on, I'm looking still. Keep going.
I mean, okay, what do other people think? Do people think he really thought he was a vampire on this panel, or do we all?
No, we
people
don't.
think I think he just used it as just a cover, or maybe an attempt at an insanity plea later.
Yeah, I think that's exactly what he was going for, because if you say something that sounds too outlandish, too outrageous, when you're in front of court, when you have been charged with all these murders and whatnot, they're going to think like there's this thing that they think that if you are found to be insane, they're going to walk free. So I'm guessing that he thought that's what was going to happen, and that's why he made these allegations that he was a vampire or something like that.
By the way, yeah, I was right. It's the same guy. He went by the name Jonathan while he was here.
Okay.
Right.
But you're correct. Rod Farrell was his real name.
And apparently his vampire's character's name was Vesago. At which point I'm like, come up with a better name.
I just found that too.
Yeah.
I'm trying to be the devil advocate here, but I can't in good faith argue in favor of an argument which to me holds no water whatsoever, which is media has a one-to-one correlation of influence on behavior when we know it doesn't. It doesn't control behavior to this manner.
No,
So
no, straight up, it doesn't. Because as Eric pointed out at the beginning of the show, there was a time back in the 80s, earlier than most of you people listening to us actually were born, that these Christian mothers against whatever decided that D&D was Satanism and that they were trying to lure our kids into blasphemy and blah, 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 blah. I'm like, no. Most people I knew played good characters, either neutral good, lawful good or whatever. And I'm like, how can you just automatically assume you know everything about a game without ever playing it?
It's in America specifically, since that's where I know I live, so I can speak to that. In America, games in the mainstream media have always been somewhat demonized. They've always been looked at in a negative light as either it's a children's thing or it causes behavior because it's a convenient scapegoat of blame.
True that. Side note, Storm, I'm sorry I keep the mic away from my mouth so I doesn't get in the way of the vodka. So there's that. Moving on.
Valid.
That's a good thing. Well,
I mean, there is always something to be blamed. He was probably really into the Vampire the Masquerade game. He wanted to live it without really thinking of the consequences. And part of that, normally, there's this whole, what's it called, sociological thing that one has to think of. Because how often do you see that a young guy just decides to go out there and kill people? And no one around him knew about it. So maybe it was something, not just the game, maybe it was something in his environment, something in where he grew up and that kind of stuff that just drove him to go a little bananas and just take it a step too far.
Yeah.
Oh shit, she just reminded me I have the voice. So I can do it if I need to. But
there you project.
No, the voice as in put your hand in the box.
Oh, that too.
Yes.
No, not the voice. Don't use the voice.
Yeah.
We're not going to bust out the weirding way yet.
Yes, I am. If I need to, I will.
Yeah, for Farrell, I mean, who knows? Really, only he would, and he may not have a full grasp of what happened. All we know is he pled guilty and has life without parole for his dual murder, and he's
exactly
where he deserves
to be.
He admitted to being guilty, so he wasn't crazy. He knew what he did was wrong, and now he's in jail for the rest of his life. So, I mean, this controversy is one of those ones where if people had taken a moment to think it through, to talk it out, to research, it wouldn't have happened. But sensationalism is what it is, and if you can be like, ooh, murderer tied to game, games are bad, watch more at 11, ratings.
Yeah, that's always been part of it too, is how many papers can you sell? And this was back when papers were still a thing. Yeah, right?
Right.
Papers, the evening news, things like that.
The other thing was that I remember very specifically having to talk to the people at the University of Texas Student Union because they were wondering, I guess, what we, kind of what we were doing. And I had one of the students there was interested and came to check it out and actually ended up playing. it was really, I guess I would say, another interesting chapter in things when we basically kind of had to just kind of chill and kind of lay low for a bit, to put it, quite, kind of the way it was. It was just like we had a place with Union, we were able to keep it and able to keep the game going. And we were really worried back then that the game was going to fold, that White Wolf was going to go out and everything else. And luckily, that didn't end up happening. And the game continued, which was great.
Yes. So let's move on now to the most recent controversy, and I hope y'all heard the quotes, because I don't consider it a controversy. This is just a bunch of whiny ass crybabies, and I don't care how you people take it, who hear this show now or hear it later. I'm done.
We said we were going to keep it civil.
I know, but you are the point. Civil is one thing, but making it so that nobody else can enjoy what they do because they decided to spam emails to the company saying that they're offended. Oh my God, we're so offended. No, you're not offended. You're just a snowflake, and you need to get a real life. If you're not, if you're that offended by what we just dealt with,
Pete, we're getting into uncivil territory.
Thank you.
Let's pull it back.
Thank you.
So,
No,
You're
thank
welcome.
you. No, seriously, thank you.
So, allow me real quick to play the devil's advocate for the Chechenian controversy. Oops. Here we go. Looking at the pages, looking at the arguments, what I believe the crux of the argument is the way Chechnya is portrayed in the game, yes, specifically, is it uses a real-world tyrannical government as a set piece, realism, as a set piece for a vampire antagonist, and then continues to say that the human rights violations and murdering of real people are being released via the media as a smokescreen for the true kindred empire rising in Chechnya. Now, a perspective on this, thinking about those real-life people, is that White Wolf is using a real-life genocide and the oppression of peoples as not only a selling point, but a plot point in their story is disrespectful to the gravity of the situation in real life.
But hold up. I got something to say. So, this is more important or less important than the original burning. The Catholic Church killing people because they believe something different. And the old burning is mentioned in vampire lore as, taking out some of the elders in Eastern and Western Europe. But how is that any different?
So the difference in argument is we understand now in this time that there is a separation of time, and we're allowed to place things in fiction that work off the reality of the past. But this burning also admits that innocent humans and people who were innocent were also burned. It wasn't just vampires who were all killed. The humans killed other humans in their fanaticism and in their rush to kill supernatural creatures. They murdered each other. So
now let me.
However, the difference.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Current time. I was just going to say one of the biggest difference is time. One of these is currently happening. One of these is in the past by several decades, if not at least over a century. So time is a major problem.
We've got a technical issue. I need the rest of the folks that are in the chat to please let us know if you're having a buffering issue as well as Storm is. Please let us know so I can try and remedy the situation. Thank you. Go on.
Kyde, you had a point.
Yes, I was going to mention something regarding this situation. Using a real life setting and all that for the game, I'm holding in my hands this book. It's Mexico City by Night. I was born and raised in Mexico City. It doesn't sound like it, but I did. And I read this whole book, like, cover to cover, and I think it's absolutely awesome. Like, they talk about how... they talk about how it's the capital of Sabat. There's crime, there's violence, and yes, I know there's crime and there's violence in like in almost every city of the world. The biggest situation here is that I understood that this was a game. I was not out there thinking, oh well, people die every day in my city, this is kind of offensive. I understood that this is a game. In every World of Darkness book, it has the warning. Well, the old ones, they specifically said, this is a game. You are not a vampire. You are not a supernatural being. So if you cannot discern the reality from the game, put this book down and find some help.
Then put the fucker down and walk away. Seriously.
Precisely.
Very good point. So I have to be like, what I say in counter is there's a difference between using a real life place for a setting and adding some fictional extra details, and what these people are angry about is using an ongoing human rights crisis and violation as a plot point. And the only time they address it in the book is as a media smokescreen to the vampire empire growing in the area. That's the difference, is the context and in which way they frame the current real-life genocide. That's their argument. That's where they're coming from.
Here's the argument that I've been working on all week. All week since we had to cancel last show. The Gehenna War is going on in the Middle East, and nobody seems to care that the Syrians and the Iraqis and all the other crazy bullshit that's going on in the Middle East, they're not bent out of shape about that. But Chechnya is off limits? How figure?
Okay, so counter is, in many of the source books so far, we don't actually have definitive details about the goings-on of the Gehenna War. It's kept purposely vague because they're still writing it. For Chechnya, again, it's specific. It's specific in its scope. It's specific in its build. The Albrecht have a very specific, well-thought-out structure. It's all laid out in those pages. And where people take the issue again is they're using specifically Chechnya, and specifically they say, oh, the news reports on the Sharia law terrorists and the goings-on with the concentration camps of homosexuals. Yeah, that's happening, but it's all part of a vampire plot secretly. And what people think is a human rights violation is actually just vampires running the entire country top down.
So it chalks it up as a plot point, even though it's actually happening in real life.
And that's where people feel like it therefore doesn't respect the gravity of the real life situation. And that's where they feel, and I'm going to embody the argument for a second, I feel that it plays with a very sensitive real life subject and real life lives for the purpose of selling a book and a possible plot point.
But even then, it's just using a real world situation. They're not making light of it. It's relief. It's like, holy crap, this horrible thing is happening. And this may be one of the reasons, as far as the show is the game is concerned, but it's not making light of it. It's just throwing this whole horror in relief.
Yes, and I hate to repeat myself, but it's the same thing. In Mexico City, they were talking about all the violence that everyone who lived there were living every day. And it's the same thing.
You cut out, dude. Did we lose him?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we got you. Come on.
Sorry. I don't know what happened. So yeah, they just grabbed this whole situation, like day-to-day violence that every Mexican that lives in the capital of the country is living. They made a book out of that. But no one grabbed the picket sign and went out there to march saying that this is very offensive. Because it's a game.
It's a game.
My people understand that. that this is nothing. This is not making fun of them. This is not saying that they deserve it. They don't saying this that it's good that this thing is happening. Let's make some money out of that. They just understand that they grab a real life situation and make a game out of it. And just like they have made movies of tragedies, people throw millions of dollars at that, and no one. Well, yeah, there's a bunch of people that protested, but it's in this case, it's just fiction.
Yeah, but let's dial it back one more notch. When the V5 book came out, they just, there's four words in the Bruges section that talk about Nazis. And I'm like, but everybody fucking lost their mind. Completely.
So
I mean, I guess they don't remember that in the book Berlin by Night, Heinrich Himmler,
Hello?
the Führer, was a Tremere.
Hello?
A straight-up real-life Nazi turned into a Tremere. Why no one was crying about that?
Nobody bitched then.
So there are two things, and I think it all combines into one idea of timing and real-life context.
It's been 70 years.
You're right. For Heinrich, yes, it's been 70 years. For Heinrich, also the timing of when that book came out, the idea and fear of the rise of neo-Nazis was not nearly as high as it is today. A lot of people have a genuine fear of a rise of a fascist state and of the return of neo-Nazis to the forefront of possible political power. So when they see in their book of escapism, switching to that controversy for a moment, the idea that a Bruja, and they're sort of highlighting it specifically, that a Bruja can be a... I did. I'm going to say it over and over again. Don't care. As an example, could be a neo-Nazi who calls themselves far right or alt right.
Sure.
To them,
back
could
me
signal.
up, girl. I'm just saying.
Could signal a possible fear of normalization. You can play as this as given permission, and could lead to normalization, which is also what I feel. They're warning the people are worried about, because the book doesn't say anywhere in the Camarilla book that you can't play Albrecht if they're bad. It creates it in a form of, well, you could oppose Albrecht, but you could also join them. You could be a part of that organization that's doing these terrible things. And it comes down to the concept of timing and normalization of terrible things.
Well, let me ask you this. Let me ask you something. Real life, a person with a Nazi attire comes and tells you, hey man, do you want to join us? Would you join them?
Say that one more time. I was reading comments in the YouTube. I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. I was going to say, if someone dressed as a Nazi, identifies himself as a Nazi or alt-right, comes and tells you, hey, come and join us, we have the correct ideology. Knowing what you know, would you, like, in good conscience, join them just because he came over and asked you?
No, because I know they're evil, racist scumbags.
I also am willing to accept that Nazis were embraced.
Well, let's be clear. No one's saying that's not something that. Well, okay. Let's be clear. I think we can all agree Nazis can be embraced. The main fear they have is people playing Nazis who are embraced and then portraying them as, in any way, shape, or form, heroic. That's a loose argument. I can't really play devil's advocate for, and I was doing so good.
Even then, I don't assume that any character I play is a good guy.
Right.
In Vampire, no.
Not at all. And there's this thing, when Jason Carl was doing a Q&A, he said something that I remember very clearly. Nazis and vampires, they are both monsters. We are playing a different type of monster. And again, this word comes in. Playing. We are just interpreting something. We're not really embracing anything. Any smart person would know that becoming a Nazi would just make him both a social outcast and a complete asshole. And
even vampires would have issues.
Yeah.
So I want to take a second here.
Yeah.
If you don't mind.
Go ahead, man.
Now, on this fun little neo-Nazi issue, if you look in the Sabat book, and you look at the picture and descriptions of the Blood Brothers,
Oh yeah.
the Blood Brothers pictured are two skinheads.
Mm-hmm.
Now, me personally, I have dealt with those guys at different shows and various points in my life, and I didn't. I know me personally, when I saw that, I kind of laughed my ass off. And the biggest reason I laughed my ass off is because they're depicted. Yes, they're skinheads. Yes, they're neo-Nazi skinheads. But they're dumb as shit.
Oh yeah. No, dude, I feel you.
They're also the creation of a bigger monster and an utter idiotic hive mind.
Right. So,
Saint Felicia, patron saint of farewells, man.
So with a lot of this, I guess one of my big points is that this stuff has been there. All of this stuff. Whenever I hear people that will complain, let's say, for instance, like another, because, and I hate to keep coming back to the Polygon articles because
I know.
I'm trying
not to quote them, but okay.
These things that keep popping up, like when somebody says, well, I don't like the sexual content, or I don't like the sexual assault part of this, and I'm like, I have to tell them, well,
isn't the embrace or even
no. Actually, your existence, how you feed, everything else involved. I mean, it's like, I've given my point of view on this, but like, I'll go back to the Nazi thing. Yeah, I'll stick with that for right now.
You might keep me out of trouble, dude. And I don't even want to say that, but yeah, let's do it.
Exactly. On that Nazi thing, there's, even back then, there were a lot of things in the books and a lot of things even during role playing that are a bit uncomfortable, and it's always dealt with subjects that are uncomfortable. The game, they're all, if I really wanted to, get bent out of shape being Native American, I could go off for hours on the entire werewolf, okay? But I don't, because it's a cool game. The whole, and I'm looking at this couple of things, if it was better worded or the political climate it's in. The thing is that the neo-Nazis have been here for a while. They haven't gone away. They're not going to go away. Okay? What we do is that when we saw them in the punk shows, the first thing we do is we go to a show, we figure out whoever's got white laces on or red laces, and they would get the shit kicked out of them first. And we would basically wait until they left. Basically, we just keep kicking them until they left, and that's how things were. It has nothing to do with anything that was written. It just doesn't. And the political climate we're living in has nothing to do with it, because it was still the same back then. This was shows I was going to in Texas, or shows I was going to in the South. The thing is that you can even, strangely enough, put things into context of, even if you were playing that character as a neo-Nazi, and going off and stuff like that, that was your character,
Right.
The whole thing is that could be you personally exploring what it may be. There's all kinds of ways that you can think of that can be doing it, and how to make that guy even heroic. Well, maybe he comes, to the realization that he's a dumbass. Okay, that could be part of his story arc. You can take things like this and make them into something, but you can also take them into making something that they're not. And in this case,
pop in on that kind of comment thread?
I can't. Yeah, feel free.
Hang
So-
on just a second. We've got a couple of questions and or comments via the gallery. So,
I think we can hit those up once Ken makes his point because he's been really quiet.
All right. I mean, if that's fine with you all.
While it's fresh, go.
okay.
All right. So, ideally, what I'm looking at, and the only issue I ever really have with this kind of controversy is that every fictional story that has gone through that has been considered great, or like some of the more intense movies we've seen, most of us remember the first time we've seen Saw. You know, it's an extremely intense, gory movie. It left an impression on you. It's in order for you to have great stories, you have to have great villains. If you have a real world event that you can feel something for, and you can apply a fictional aspect to it, it gives that touch of realism that lets you really experience that overcoming the bad, in my opinion. And
I just
See where I'm going with
please
that?
don't anybody take offense at this, but half of our commentary is from the gallery, and we really need to make sure that the folks that put questions or so on in the gallery, we should actually make sure that we
will.
actually address relatively
Right.
soon. Okay, so, and I'm going to say, we've got 3 so far that I really need to comment on. Playing Devil's Advocate, this is from Storm. Playing Devil's Advocate, is it possible people find offense because they feel that taking specific situations for a game in poor taste, that it belittles the horror these people go through?
Well, I think, from my viewpoint, if let's say you're personifying a character that's causing this kind of harm, right? It allows you as a person to explore the concepts of how atrocious these things are, and it allows you, I think, to take a different viewpoint than most people just take. Now, I'm not saying it's good or bad, and I'm not trying to create a polarizing argument, but if you look at things from different viewpoints, you can then find the humanity in that person that's got this inherent root of evil in them and try and pull them back to it. If you're just yelling at them and trying to scream at them and telling them they're wrong and all that, you're not going to get anywhere with them. You have to find their humanity and go from there. And if you don't do that, you're going to have a hard time. There's an African American gentleman who actually goes to KKK rallies.
Yeah, the undercover Klansman. I love him.
Well, he doesn't disguise himself. He goes there. He talks to them. He doesn't belittle his own people. But he's actually convinced a handful of grand wizards to get rid of the robes, to kind of live their lives. And I feel like to just put up a wall and pretend like they're no longer a human part of our existence, I think cheapens your existence in a sense. And to just turn a blind eye to someone else's viewpoints makes you not as bad, but a little bit, you're not helping, and I feel like if you really want these things to go away, you have to extend a hand of care and let them know that they don't have to be vilified and that they can be accepted, that they don't have to, because now it goes from I feel like this to I have to be like this to protect myself because I'm already been labeled this way. We're going to band together and try to stand together so we're not broken down.
Okay, the next.
I'm gonna actually answer New Wave's second question because I already answered her first.
You already did you? All right.
What I was saying. The thing about the whole Nazi Bruja thing was that it wasn't a section. There was no section at all. As a matter of fact, when I first got the
words.
when I first got the book, I sat there and I was like, okay, I'm gonna try to see this one out. I'm gonna see, I think everybody has a valid point at first, and then I did it. I saw the one thing in the brouhaha, which was literally one word, and then I searched the entire book. I literally put Nazi and everything else and searched it, and there is one word, one word in the entire text.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I feel you.
That word is in a sentence, and that sentence it's in a fragment of that sentence. Okay, nowhere in that sentence does it say, "Hey, we're go out and play a Nazi, go out and play a neo-Nazi, go out and be a neo-Nazi."
I know, right?
Matter of fact, my point being with that is that it wasn't even that it could have been worded better or that anything else. It was just that. It was just that. I mean, it is what it is, and that's that on that. I'm looking at it right now. I just did it.
Yeah, I know I did too. 4 words.
Right.
4 fucking words.
Can someone tell me what is it?
Okay. What?
He wants you to read it to him.
Oh, yeah. Let me pull it back up. Hold on.
It's 4
I moved on.
fucking words.
Hold on. Let me pull this back up. Hold on. Damn it. We'll take a brief moment. So I can find it really easily. It is on page 65. Basically at the top of the page, and the entire sentence is, while the Klan definitely includes a substantial number of vocal and visible outsiders, their desire for rebellion reaches as deep as the fraudster ripping off his own company, the lawyer representing the poor pro bono, the neo-Nazi claiming to be alt-right, and the basement-dwelling downloading thousands of movies illegally for redistribution on streaming sites. Now, that is it. That is the quote. That is exactly what it says. So,
I said that because between the 2 commas, it's only 4 fucking words.
It's actually 6.
Is it?
The neo-Nazi claiming to be alt-right is 6 words.
Okay, my bad. You got
It's
it.
fine.
6. I will.
But you're right.
Yeah, no.
And I mean, on that note, if you go to page 421, it's right there. Fascism in play. Vampire the Masquerade is not a facet-friendly game.
Yep.
It's right there.
Yeah.
It's a whole freaking
Fascism
paragraph.
is not a. Yes. That's the 4 words I meant. My bad.
Oh, there you go.
So, hold on. We have more commentary coming in from the gallery. So, Storm says the thing is, you want to make a villain that gamers can get behind, to hate. Almost everyone will abhor a villain that commits these type of atrocities. Yeah, even my kindred would be willing to say that is true. Because Tremere and or Nas, and now that I'm a Nas too, God, I don't know how that happened. I have no idea how that happened. But it's just to the point where I just don't get how folks can go from the 90s and say that rape by embrace or feeding is okay, but this is out of line.
And let's remember, the whole Giovanni Chronicles, I'm not going to get in depth, but it's a lot more fucked up than this.
Yeah, I know. I've read it, dude. There ain't no joke there, man.
All right.
So a counterpoint. I'm just gonna keep playing devil's advocate on this because I can. Counterpoint one. These new books are part of a rebranding meant to draw in new players, whereas things like the Giovanni Chronicles and the Cities by Night were optional during timing during the heyday of the publishing. Also, I had another point. Give me a second. Also, the Albrecht in the book aren't necessarily completely described as an antagonist. There is heavy leanings towards them being an antagonist. I will give you that. It's clear in the book they're named as a threat. The in-character narrator is saying, despite this kind of being a kindred utopia, I wouldn't live there.
No.
And despite the lip service to the Camarilla's ideals,
even
it's
New Wave
lip service.
agrees with you, dude. It's like, no, I ain't close, yo.
Yeah.
I want to ask you this. Since you're playing devil's advocate, I want to ask you this, right?
Shoot.
This is, in its basal form, is entertainment, right? This is
Yes.
It is. I have
It's
way too much fun playing.
If we take something also recent, right? Like, let's take Game of Thrones. Game of Thrones has loads of topics in it that would be considered the Red Wedding, the forced marriages. But my point is like those things in there, they serve as a depiction of a reason to hate a character or a reason to ally with the character. No one went to like King Joffrey, like the guy who played him, and hated him specifically. Really, you know what I mean? Like, but my
They
point
did.
is, but those people are not necessarily stable-minded.
Not even.
Precisely.
Civil.
Merci beaucoup pour la commande.
Civil. So, Game of Thrones, since we'll use Game of Thrones real quick. The wedding scene between Sansa and the wedding night scene between Sansa and
Ramsay Bolton.
Ramsay Bolton
Yes.
got major backlash because
Oh,
people
no,
were like,
Yep.
I get the
Sansa
house,
was
you get
becoming
the
a
dogs.
serious character. She was growing into a strong woman character, and then you have her raped in front of the eunuch, and it diminishes her character. There's a whole controversy about that. Huge, massive controversy about that. The actor who played Joffrey said he's literally taking a
Yeah, Jack Gleason is done.
many-year
so not
break
interested.
from acting because
Yes.
of the hatred he got for playing a role.
Yes.
So we can argue, are these controversies valid? Let's step away from the are people, are they right mentally argument, because that just gets into a slope I don't think any of us really actually want to touch. But let's get to the idea of, are these arguments valid? That's what we're here to discuss. What makes a valid argument? What makes a valid feeling? So I feel where we have to really stand on it is we have to be like, okay, there are valid arguments for things, but if something elicits an emotional reaction out of you, we kind of have to go, that's valid, that's subjective, that's them. If someone reads a thing, like let's say a Giovanni using a certain bone for self-pleasure, and that elicits a reaction out of you, that reaction's valid. Among the spectrums of, what reactions you could have, disgust, laughter due to uncomfortableness, even excitement of that's really great writing, love that. It happens. This whole little range of reaction to fiction is valid.
I have mentioned on more than one occasion during the show that during the Clan Wars that Madeline Giovanni decides to summon her great-great-grandmother by masturbating with her thigh bone.
That's exactly what I was thinking about in the Giovanni Clan novel.
Yes!
Yeah, the thigh bone is what I was also referencing. And the reaction it elicits. So, again, what we can do, and again, myself, playing devil's advocate, I understand I'm trying to use the best argument I've seen. Me personally, I still don't fully agree with it, because my major counterpoint is what many of you guys have been saying of, yes, I understand that, but it's fiction. I guess I go one step further in my own argumentation. I go, not only is it fiction, But let's take a real look at the source material here, and let's break down the idea of if we can't use something happening in our current time in our media to critique or explore that in any fictional or entertainment way,
But I'm
then
offended.
technically we have to hold that standard across the board.
Bullshit.
Meaning, let me finish, Peter, please. Their argument hinges on the idea that you can't do this thing because X, Y, and Z. And I go, okay, if we follow your rules, we have to be consistent with that. So we can't use any current ongoing thing in our media. So Saturday Night Live is canceled. You can't have people impersonating Trump. He's currently president. You can't comment on current political things. We can't have any sort of media depicting things like police brutality in a negative light to have people address it through our media. Our media is important to address things as they're happening.
True that. But
I understand where they're coming from in the Chechnya book. Again, I think reading it, I get it. The Albrecht, to me, read is this weird, dark sort of Sabbat Khamite heresy mixture, as well as like we're gonna throw in some Banu Hakim lore, because Sharia is very much, and like the Chechnyan thing is very, and there's some things thrown in there about like Islamic influence is very strong in it. It's a very complex thing, because in reality that situation is very complex. The Crimean War, the Civil War, the way Putin allows the despot to rule it, because the despot keeps a firm grip on the country so apartments aren't being bombed by terrorists who come from Chechnya. All of this is a very complex, dark issue. And White Wolf is trying to take that issue and be like, monsters are running this, and we're going to give those monsters a face and a name that you can face and make them a global threat, because they are in real life.
okay. Now,
So,
back in the
I
day,
agree.
I have been a member of the White Wolf forums since almost day one. And nobody cared that Madeline Giovanni masturbated with her great-grandmother's thigh bone. Nobody gave a shit.
I mean, unless you're into it.
Exactly. But even then, nobody cared.
We
Nobody.
do live in a time right now where things are more sensitive and people are more alert to that sensitivity. I think we can all agree on that, right?
No.
Yes, and that's exactly the problem. People are being too sensitive about stuff that does not require being sensitive about.
What he
They're
said.
thinking, yeah, they're thinking with their emotions. They're trying to make everything about emotions instead of being completely logical about it.
Well, to be fair, humans can't be purely logical beings. We're not Vulcans. We are emotional creatures.
No, what did they say in the first Men in Black? People are stupid, dumb, and what was it?
Oh, no, person is smart, people are dumb, and panicky animals, and you know it.
And you know it. That's what we're working with here.
Actually, no. No, we're not. I just watched a really, really good video the other day. Actually, no, it was last night. It was shared on Facebook, and it was a guy who I believe he was a CEO, or he was talking about and I see people talking about this whole generation thing with this millennial. Anyway,
my foot.
A lot of ways.
My foot hurts.
I'm sorry, sweetie.
Oh, Miss Olivia.
In a lot of different ways.
Kiss my foot.
Yes, I can kiss your foot. Hold on, I gotta.
Foot. No, kiss the foot.
Go play. It's we basically have reached a point.
Oh, Miss Thing.
Go play. It's more of a we have a lot of people now, okay, and it's not just a certain generation. It's a a whole it's not even. I mean, it's more than one generation who have kind of set. I mean, you have it starting with, I want to say, my generation, the Generation Xers, raising our kids after our hippie parents, And then growing up in the 80s, we learned that strangers are evil. We don't trust anybody. And then so we raise our kids and we keep them inside. We don't let them go out and explore. We don't let them have those fundamental parts of their a big part of growing up is being an adolescent, you know, where you rebel against your parents and you leave the family to join the tribe as a whole, you know, society. Okay, that's a very big part of somebody's life, some of your formative years. And we rebelled against our parents by not being hippies. Okay, but then also at the same time, that era where we had that overlap of the greatest generation and the hippies was the 80s, early 90s, and in that area was when we were shown that everything is scary, everything, you know, you can't go outside. So when we have our own kids, we kept them inside. We did everything that we could, and we almost want to say overprotected them, and it kind of created this domino effect to where now, okay, not only is a society, but we have a whole generation of kids and adults now who missed out on their adolescence and missed out on that very important formative part of their life. You know, there's a bunch of kids that can't. That if you ask anybody, like for me, when was the first time you went outside and played by yourself? Well, I did it every day. But if you ask somebody like, I mean, somebody who was born even like a few years after me, it starts getting 10, 11, 12, 14, 15, to where you went out and did things on your own. And I think that does actually play and there's other factors too that blend into this.
I was 8 years old when I climbed my first mountain.
But I mean, it's a big part of it. At the same time, we have everybody responding to absolutely everything with their base emotion, and that base emotion is anger. So we've become to a point to where everything around us, especially here in America, is geared towards eliciting that response. Okay, if you look at the way political debates are formed, if you look at the way television is, with every talk show, with every you know, every bit that comes out, the most popular shows and the most popular things that are consumed are things that will arise our anger, so that we're angry most of the time and we don't always know it. So that first initial response to something like this, where you're shown something that you don't agree with, isn't to take a look at it, it is to rail against it immediately.
Or agree with it.
It's gotten to a point to where that's just where we are. And yes, we do have to. I mean, feelings are valid. Feelings are real. People have feelings for a reason. And I think it's. I don't even know where I'm going with this right now.
Allow me to interrupt you there, and I'm sorry about that.
Man.
But
Go,
if you think about it, yeah, from a psychological point of view, being angry about everything that is out of your control is a form of mental regression. You're acting, well, not you specifically, but like they would be acting like kids, throwing a tantrum whenever something is not going their way. And they're going to keep yelling and screaming and kicking until something is done about it. And where I mean, in college, they told me that that's a mental disorder. So being just agreeing and catering to this anger that the very few are having is both bad for the industry and bad for the people that are actually into this type of things. So it's not like making someone's feelings invalid. It's just that if you think about it, the kicking and screaming of the few are so deafening that the logical voices of the many are not being heard.
Well, I said this last time we talked about this, and a way to counteract that is when these things pop up, we have to reach out to those that it is about and give them support and also give support publicly. And to try and begin discussions of arguments of, okay, I get that you're mad about this, but can I ask why? And you start pushing for the arguments, and then you counter them if you have a counter. Like, again,
And that's the logical way of doing it.
and that is. And some people sometimes have to take a break and walk away before they can come back and be logical about their argument, and that's fine too. So again, I tried to present the best logical argument I could here of the timing and the method of which it was written was done in a way that for many people not only elicited anger, but also to them logically takes what they feel is a real life travesty that isn't getting enough attention and gives it the wrong attention. So, I don't believe from that stance. I've tried to portray it in the best, most mature way possible, because that's the best argument I have found on the other side. I'd love to hear more. But that's where I think that argument comes from, and we have to be able to be like, okay, I get your argument, but here's my counter. And one of the easiest things to do is, well, you're too sensitive. And it's like, we have to make sure, because both sides do this of anything. And you are right. The anger is the base emotion being elicited through our media and through our news. If you watch any news thing, it's two phases. It's elicit anger and then play the moral high ground. And that's where it comes from, is playing the moral high ground of, but we can help you be a better person if you just join our side and think the way we do. Both sides do this. The alt-right neo-Nazis do it, and the left side does it because it's this idea of...
Yeah, both sides. I got to, dude.
We're the moral superiors. Join us. We know what's right. And it's like, no, you don't.
No, not always is that the case.
Almost never it is. So,
nope.
You have to be able...
I'm not saying I'm right. I'm not saying they're right. I'm just saying that's usually the case. Both sides.
Exactly.
Right.
So, and both sides isn't always like, it's the fallacy of duality and fallacy of compromise. One cannot compromise with evil, or one is doing an evil act. That's the fallacy of compromise. The compromise is always the greatest answer. I'm a religion
major. I have a degree, and I know that evil is not a hit or miss proposition.
Mm-hmm. And the idea and the what was it? It was the fallacy of duality is the idea that there's always and only two sides of a thing, when things are almost always multifaceted, or some things really only have one right side.
I have 100-sided die, and that ain't enough.
See? So, again, it's we have to be aware of oversimplifying an issue, and we have to ensure that when we talk about it, like with any controversy, we need to start being more proud and loud about our viewpoints on things, so that way, like Kyde was just saying,
the situation that you're right.
Like Kyde was saying, the very loud anger drowns out everyone else. We need to start speaking up then. And maybe things could end up differently. Now, things have ended up the way they've ended up, and that's something we could talk about now, is where White Wolf is now, what they've done with the Camarilla book. I forget if they're doing it for the Anarch book too, but I know they did it for the Cam book, and White Wolf is being absorbed into Paradox.
What is the pronunciation for the double L in Spanish?
Camarilla.
Camarilla.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right. Say no. And
Camarilla?
I'm willing to no. I'm just throwing some comedy in here, but I'm just saying, Bruja are willing to be, that, but Camarilla, I am not willing to accept.
I have, ever since I came to the US, I pronounced it Camarilla, and
No,
I pronounced it Bruja.
I'm just saying.
No, you can. It's like LaCroix and LaCroix. Both are technically correct depending on where you are.
Right?
LaCroix.
I'm just throwing some comedy in here because we've been way too fucking serious over the last
it's
hour.
true. It's
I
true.
wanted some comedy in there, dude.
No, that's fair. That was good comedy. I don't know. I feel like we got less serious when we talked about the hip bone masturbation.
Yes, I know we did, but it didn't go there. I was trying. I really was. I was trying in the gallery. I was trying with the folks in the chat, but you people weren't having it. So here we go. Camarilla.
Camarilla.
Nah, fuck you. And the horse you rode in on your little dog.
Brouhaha.
I called it. See, the ironic thing is that when I was in Mexico playing with my friends in Spanish, we always called it Bruja.
I know.
And when I came here in the US, I started saying
I'm
Bruja.
willing to accept that, but I am not willing to accept Camarilla. It's not going to work for me.
Well, I say Camarilla, I say Bruja, and I say Ventru.
Yeah,
Okay, the last one was a lie.
But no, it's Camarilla.
Are we really going to get into a pronunciation argument?
Oh shit!
Really?
Oh no shit! The fucking chat just lit up. Oh my god!
Oh shit! I snorted.
If it makes you feel any better,
Yes.
Peter, I ran into someone who pronounced them Giovanni.
Giovanni.
I am never gonna go there. I know. I'll say Bruja, but I will never say Camarilla or Camarilla or whatever.
What?
I think he's even confused himself. That
No,
hurts the vodka.
Even New Wave agrees with me. It's Bruja.
No, dude.
You know what? If I wanted to respect a Garbage Low clan, yeah, I'd pronounce their name right, but I don't want to.
I'm a Tremere. How dare you?
I'm a gangrel. You can keep your political
Fuck
bullshit.
your gangrel bullshit. You left the clan. You left the camp.
Yeah.
I ain't got no sense of humor about your bullshit.
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, yeah, let's make fun of the clan who made the right decision.
I
Right.
fuck that.
Camarilla,
No,
fuck.
that's Javier, and he can fuck himself. Just saying.
Camarilla and Josh are all the same.
Since we're on this, the first character I really played, in LARP for a long time was a Bruja.
Fuck you.
And and we were playing with people from all over the world, Peter.
I hear you, dude.
And it was kind of cool because the way the LARP was working was that we had an inner circle, okay, and we had player characters that were like.
See, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
And it was pretty cool, honestly. And our
Yeah, I almost wish I played that because I could
I
have
don't, believe
done.
I don't believe I just forgot what they're called. The inner
Yeah,
circle
no,
members.
I could have done.
No. Anyway,
Pieces of
my
America,
point-
of
my
the
point
United States.
is that as a clan as a whole, which there was, kind of a few hundred of us, anybody that said Bruja, we in-game beat the shit out of.
And now you know
There
why
were-
I would
there-
shoot her in
There
the face.
there were several different archons that met their death by the entire clan for saying that.
No
Eric,
child
are you
actress
saying it's
would
like
allow
calling it
that.
Tarjay?
Yes,
So-
it's calling it Tarjay. So
I pronounce it Tarjay. But whenever I talk about... So here's what I do, though, is I always go, well, we should always go to the fine establishment known as Tarjay.
Yes! Yes!
I do the same thing.
I think Into the Wilderness has hit something, a decent nail on the head we should address, in that in the way modern game design is done, the Chechnya thing was done in a way that wasn't fully in compliance with it. Because White Wolf started the thing where they actually referred to the player originally reading it, you saw her a lot. And then they moved into switching pronouns in order to try and ensure the book wasn't one gender specifically targeted.
Mhm.
The Chechnya thing, for some people, missed the mark. So maybe a question I wanted to bring it back to a slightly serious topic, is maybe our opinion was the minority. We didn't see emails. or things. We do see online arguments which devolved into personal attacks. Is social media is, well, a terrible place to have a decent human conversation
True
with
that.
someone. We can
I
all
agree.
agree with it.
Yo.
And White Wolf, Paradox, the writers all agreed to pull the book and rework that passage and a few other things. So, you know what? Whether we agree with the decision or not, it was the decision that they made, the business made. And maybe we also, like Peter said earlier, we can't always assume we're right, but we also can't always assume we're the majority. We may be the minority who are like, we really didn't care.
Nah,
We really
give
didn't
a fuck.
Changed.
Still changed.
Well, we may not have been the number. They changed it. But we may not have been the minority. Or we may have been the minority in the situation.
Yeah, I get you, dude. And I'm more than willing to accept that. But what I'm not willing to accept is that we can do what we want. Page 96 of the old Green Book. If you don't like the rules, change them.
You're completely
Precisely.
correct. Brian Scott brings up another interesting question of the problem with the Chechnya thing is that it's more like the Strain or Daybreakers, and it moves away from the very hidden nature of Vampire the Masquerade, which reading it, I kind of agree. This idea that vampires openly can walk around and openly control a country, I'm like, how? And the Second Inquisition's going on and is the very next section of the book?
5
How the
points of
fuck did that
resources.
happen?
Well, let me answer back at that.
5
Please,
points
because
of
I was
resources,
reading
dude.
it and I was just asking, how the fuck did this happen?
No, let me get my thing out.
5
And,
points of resources, dude. That's the way this works.
So,
Oh my god. I'm
Yeah.
having too much fun. Y'all are
Like-
going to kill me.
like, you know, the whole game itself is based on every vampire trope that's ever existed. The clans themselves are each individual parts of different movies that you can go out and see.
Uh-huh.
The
That's
good
the-
ones, at least.
Uh-huh. Yeah, the
You-
good ones.
The,
What he
the
said.
good ones, the bad ones, it didn't really matter. I mean, that was the whole
Even-
thing. What they did,
Charles
they tried to-
Carpenter's
and when they're trying to
vampires.
put it into a modern context, then sure, what's come out since I don't know, Interview with the Vampire. Okay, there's a whole bunch.
Fuck all that bullshit. That's tornado
But-
crap. And these
but-
people don't do shit.
So you know, sure, you don't like the Strain or Daybreakers or everything else, but still, there's some people that do, and maybe want to throw that into a game. But yeah, I mean, both Into the Woods and Brian, I mean, do make some pretty good freaking points. And while I don't agree with the approach to game design stuff, but I mean, yeah, they're right. It's not going to be everybody's bag. It's not going to be everybody's cup of tea.
Of
You know?
course.
And apparently, like I said, it pissed off way too many people.
Way.
Now,
Way too many.
from a business standpoint, yeah, dude, it makes a lot of freaking sense.
Make them very angry.
From a personal standpoint, you know, I'm just pissed I have to wait for my book.
Fair.
All right.
But you
I mean,
already have a copy of the unedited bullshit.
Yeah, I have a PDF, man. How many times have I been like being pissed off because I have to deal with the
True
PDF?
that, dude. No,
Same.
true that. He has been
I-
way too pissed off because he can't flip pages. And
Is
I
anyone
feel
in
it.
this group
No, I
not a
seriously
prefer
feel it.
pages person? I'm just curious.
I
What?
do.
What?
I think everyone in this chat prefers pages over PDF.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Totally.
Yes.
The reason
I
why
can't stand PDF.
is because you can have more than one book open.
Somebody's offered to buy me Beckett's journal. And I'm like, no shit, please do.
But no, yeah, that's the cool thing is that I got like 3 beat up tablets here, and I can put the book on that and pass it around and not have to buy 5 books, which is really cool. And I agree with Ken on that one. But pages, Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I was waiting for.
It's
I
because
love
of
the smell of new book.
it's mostly because of the way I find things in a book. I don't memorize page numbers. I don't memorize text, and I can't tell you word for word what a rule is. But I
Same
know
thing.
that if I flip through the book and I find this picture, that near that picture is going to be this thing. But by flipping through it, I can find it. Whereas if I gotta,
Scroll endlessly.
Full Moon Darius says, and I quote, pages, y'all.
So like no, and we're right. Again, these games come with much more now, and even in the past admitted it's highly customizable. If you don't like something, feel free to throw it out.
Page 96.
But there's also something to be said about someone not liking canon source material. But as we've seen, the canon isn't always gospel, especially with the V5 reboots, and certain NPCs were dead.
The whole
They're not dead
Gehenna War
anymore.
shit. I am
The
still
Gehenna
not happy
War.
about that.
I disagree. I'm really happy about it. I think I'm happy about it because
Where did the Methuselahs and the Antediluvians in the Americas go?
well, where'd they go? Well, there's a few theories. I know one of them is possibly still in the Appalachian Mountains, sort of wandering around as a spirit, just eating people. That was one of the possibilities. I know in the Beckett's Jihad Diary, the really fun... Well, the fun thing... Well, exactly. But though the fun concept I liked from Beckett's Jihad Diary is there's a possible plot hook where they're like, what if the antediluvians aren't actually as strong as they want you to think they are? And all of the fear-mongering is just a really long, drawn-out game of let's buff ourselves up in lore, so that way when we do arise, our children will be too scared to fight us.
Yeah,
and maybe they're weaker.
After the Ravnos Antediluvian was dealt with by the, and I'm about to say it on air, democracy.
Oh!
I know, right? Everybody else like, fuck! Why did he say that? No.
We're fine.
Now we know Pete
I'm
is drunk.
working on the new rig, and I have a firewall like nobody's business. So,
Brought to you by the Glasswalkers.
Yes! Come on! I got your shit. I got all the fucking firewall.
Oh, hey, since you mentioned the Glasswalkers, I want to backtrack a little bit. I was remembering the original the Get of Fenris tribe book, the ones that had the little comic in the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
This one has a World War II setting where there's a pack of American soldiers fighting a pack of Nazi soldiers that were also werewolves.
Oh, see, there we go.
It's almost as if evil doesn't really know
nobody
a type.
got bent out of shape about that.
Different time. I mean, personally, one of the things I find, so I'm going to be a bit more myself. One of the things I've heard complaints about, and they're like, we really hope they fix it, is people are apparently really mad that the Black Furies would like kill male babies. And we're like really upset that they wouldn't accept males into their hierarchies. And part of me was like, but I don't understand where this particular controversy is coming from. Because usually by people who are like, they argue that they're played that way as a sort of mocking mirror at radical feminists. And I'm like, if that's how you're reading it, maybe that's more on you than on them. Because the entire idea is they're like the Amazons.
Right.
They're
exactly
not...
it.
They're not. I mean, they're from Greece and Amazons, and they're like these like Wonder Woman-esque warriors.
Yeah, I know, right? That's what I thought of.
I mean, I'm thinking that most of this controversy that
And
just
it's right
pops
up
up,
there with Captain America. Just saying, but go ahead.
yeah, most of this controversy, this issues that come up and people have to get offended by, it's what I call user error. Like, make sure you know what you're reading and what exactly is based on, what what kind of game this is before you even try and pick it up.
Also, keep your mind open to a different, more light-hearted interpretation, because
Exactly.
media is inherently interpretive. We can look at a character, and if their motivations aren't directly spelled out, it leaves room for interpretation. We get to talk about what is this character's true motivations. Why do they do what they do? Like Carl Schreck. Where is Carl Schreck's number one loyalty? Is it clan or Camarilla?
It is clan. I know this as the Tremere.
But he is super loyal to the Camarilla, though. Like,
But
he is big.
because that's the only thing that keeps his clan together.
Well, not anymore. Not since the fucking airstrikes.
Oh!
No, you didn't go there, dude. You did not go there. Anyway,
And everyone in the world rejoiced.
I have a actual response. Nazi werewolves?
What is this Helsing Ultimate?
That's some more loser. Like, no, seriously, dude. Nazi werewolves? Yes, Nazi werewolves.
Yeah, pretty much.
I used
Yeah,
to,
better get a better. Yeah.
I used to play a game with a Black Fury Ragabash, and her character's name was Rips the Frown Upside Down.
That's awesome. I like it. Oh, shit, I like it.
Bullets, huh?
Rens the buttocks.
Yep.
Yeah, that's right up there.
Yep, dude. I've shared that on this show, man.
Yes, he has. That's some fun shit. But my point is,
It's actually a pure
people
trait for
can find
like,
offensive material regardless. It doesn't matter where they are, what they play, or who they read, excuse me. They're going to find offense.
Well, you can if you're looking for
I'm tired of
it.
this whole crap of I'm getting afraid of or whatever. And I'm like, no. Just deal with it. And assume that they're the bad guys. They're the people that you should be fighting against.
Civil.
If that's what you want, that's what you do.
You were saying, Eric?
One thing I've noticed, and I think this goes around for the entire situation, is that people have to let people be who they are.
Mm-hmm.
If one person is offended by something, hey, that's cool if I'm not. All right? And a lot of it boils down to what amounts to weirdly control issues, man. You baseline, you cannot control the people, places, and things around you, no matter what you say, no matter what you do.
Or how you feel.
The only thing in life, period, that you can control is how you react to things. And you can't. Nobody can cause you to feel some way. You feel some way. It's just how you respond to something. And I think, especially as a community, because that's what we are. We're a community of people that love certain things. And as a community, we have to respect that in each other. But it's not just more of a respect. It's like, you know, respect is a thing that is earned, not just given, you know. But at the same time, it's like
well, you have to give people the benefit.
It's like not forcing yourself on other people goes for everything. Just like I'm not going to force people to not play the game as dumbass superheroes with fangs. Okay?
No trench coats, no katanas.
Right. People love doing that. Okay? That's cool. And at the same time, it goes both ways. You know? We have people that are you know, assholes, you know, and people that can't take people being assholes. But the thing is that, I mean, like, I know me as a person, if I go too far in something, especially in LARP, and somebody says, hey, that makes me uncomfortable, I stop what I'm doing. and because it boils down to the whole "don't be a dick" philosophy.
What he said.
And I think some of that stuff is being lost on us as a community,
What he said.
where
Oh,
instead of
shit.
saying, "Hey, we like this, we like that," we start crossing that line into people are afraid to say you're being a dick.
Right.
Stop. All right.
Oh, sorry.
And honestly, I will tell you flat out, in any big game situation, the biggest thing that bothers me the most is when people don't speak up. If something offends you, going up to a storyteller, taking them aside and saying, "Hey, this sucks.
Sorry.
Let's not do it."
I can't.
I appreciate that.
I can't
Okay,
keep not
that's being an
laughing.
adult about doing this sort of thing. That is being respectful to everybody else around you and the person who's taking their time to run the game. Okay, because I like people to come back to games. I like people to like my games that I run. If I make somebody uncomfortable by something I'm doing, I am more than happy to stop it. But you got to let me know.
Exactly.
If you don't let me know what's bothering you, I can't address it. Whereas if you tell me straight up this sucks, I can do something about it. But if you go and amongst 3 or 4 other people that have nothing to do with the game and say that these guys are doing something, that doesn't help anything. Okay? I mean, if you're going to be a part of a community, you're part of a community because you like something. If you're going to come into a community just to be a dick and say how everybody's wrong, you don't need to be a part of that community. It's just, I mean, it's obvious that you don't like it and you're being a dick. So I think a lot of what we have to look at is, does this pass the not being a dick smell point? Make sense?
Yeah.
Very
I
much
can get
so.
behind that argument.
Yeah.
Right on. So if we look at each other and say, "Hey, you're being a dick, knock it off," that's a warning sign of you're being a dick, knock it off. I mean, it's really honestly that simple. And
Ken, were you going to say something?
However you want to take that, whatever. But I think as a community, we have to start putting ourselves to the "don't be a dick" standards, was what I'm gonna call it.
No, I feel him, dude. Seriously. But New Wave Masquerade mentioned something that hasn't popped up in 20 years in my games. Trenchcoat Asimite Squad.
Oh shit.
You know what? I could see a trench coat Banu Hakim squad.
Yeah, I know, right? No, seriously, dude.
Like, at least they're not wearing Assassin's Creed hoodies.
Oh,
Don't they
my
all have to
God.
wear black
No,
gloves?
seriously, dude. That's some funny shit. I don't give
Oh,
a
I could
shit
also-
who you are. That's funny.
You know, actually playing more to True Wave, I could actually see a trench coat Sedite squad as well.
That's
Just a
the
bunch of
same
Sedites
fucking...
walking,
Okay,
just
I
walking
get
into a
you.
room, Morpheus sunglasses, trench
Yes!
coats,
Yes!
all stepping in perfect unison, and then one of them looks over and does a sit this little girl who's watching
Sup,
them.
man?
This is not the world you are familiar with. Oh yeah, I could do that all day long. Oh,
But
my
no,
God.
I actually really agree with Eric. I like the
I
idea
do.
of
No,
let's
I
put it to the
seriously
don't
agree
be a
with
dick test, which hilariously I in the games I'm doing, because I'm doing Chronicles of Darkness games with a bunch of new people.
I'm
When we
sorry.
first, I like Chronicles of Darkness. Shush you.
Fuck you
I
and your Requiem.
I like Requiem. Screw you and your hater.
Oh god.
So don't be a dick.
I'm sorry, I'm just fucking with
Anyway,
you, dude.
I know, I am too.
I'm just
No,
fucking with you.
Understand him? You just come to S&M.
But no, I asked them all. I was like, if there's anything you don't want to happen, if there's anything that you would get squeamish about, tell me now, so I know how to form the chronicle. And they gave, like, one group gave me more rules than the other one did, but
Yeah.
it's not hard to frame darkness with a few no's thrown in.
Mhm.
Like it's really easy. It reminds me of a panel I went to of writing fan fiction that's mature without any smut in it, so without any sex scenes. And then the entire panel was like, here's how you do drug overdose writing. Violent.
Yeah, Full Moon Daria, she just admitted that you threw her to the fucking wolves, dude.
I did. I so did.
Good
Her
you.
character-
No, good you. No, I was thrown to the fucking wolves in a LARP.
No, I threw her to the wolves. I gave her the vampire book, and I was like, read through this, and you're going to make a human.
Yeah,
but you're
going
to pick a vampire you want. And then, no, literally and figuratively, because she picked Deva. So her poor human character who moves to New York, he wants to become a musician and go to music school, gets seduced, fucked, and turned all in the same night by a Deva.
Oh, Jesus. So,
and then his sire dies 2 nights later.
No, seriously, back to the whole rape. Embrace as rape. That's what this is. The Chechnya shit is seriously low-key as far as the I'm gonna fucking embrace you and you don't have any fucking choice. Go figure.
I mean, it's an interpretation. I can't argue that. It is. It's not one I personally see a lot. I mean, technically you can. Matthew Dawkins once talked about it in a thing where he was like a character he played, and he literally played a person who wasn't willing, who was embraced against her will, and to her, it felt like she had been raped, and he played the trauma out.
Exactly. Which is what we would expect.
Yeah, it's something you can do. You can totally play it out because it can be used that way. Someone can be such a vile, evil monster, and vampires often are.
The ventral.
Yeah.
Especially since you can't actually choose where you feed.
Because of that.
Right, yeah. And then, especially in Requiem, you're double fucked if it's an accident, something goes wrong, and you end up a revenant. That just sucks. You're a vampire. You just don't have disciplines, and you start in a blood pool of 0 every night. No matter how much you drink, next night you're at 0. Have fun with that. Have fun with being starving constantly. Sucks to be you.
That's one of the 17 reasons I hate Requiem.
In Eric's game is I'm not willing to actually feed as far as the Tremere aspect of, you need to feed from somebody in the projects. I'm more competent just buying a 6-pack from the local blood bank.
Mm-hmm. Well, you've seen how my character feeds. I don't care.
No, and I get that. No, I get that, dude. Because that's the way we are.
Yep. That's where our characters are.
As far as kindred are concerned, this is what we have to do. And anybody who says, holy shit, it's rape, you can't feed from people who are willing? No. Yes, we can. We're villains.
I have a question for the panel. What is everyone's most, they would say, controversial character and why?
Oh, please do. I'm about to get some Pepsi. I'll be right back.
Most controversial. Oh, that would have to be Gregory, the information broker, for me.
Okay.
Wait, what was the question? I kind of missed it.
What was the most controversial character you've ever played?
And why?
Oh.
I'll start.
Right.
Unless you want to, Kyde, because I've been talking a lot.
You go for it. I'll go after you.
Gregory, the information broker, has been an interesting character. So he's a character who, despite what everyone thought, because everyone thought he was a kindred, he wasn't. He was a ghoul who took over a Nosferatu's information network and just wouldn't meet with people face to face. He used ghouls.
Access to the ShrekNet gets you killed.
This is Requiem, Nosferatu. Nice try.
Okay.
So he was basically this Nosferatu information broker would only ghoul children and would keep them children because he was a pedophile. And one day he got tired of Gregory and decided to stop feeding him. So Gregory started to age and went into withdrawal. Gregory, convinced he was in love with this vampire, staked him and bloodbagged him, and then took over his information network, and for years pretended to be the information broker. And would feed the other ghoul children blood he tapped from the vampire, and was generally a terrible, horrible person. Until eventually the party members discovered this, set the vampire free, and Gregory got drained and killed by his former master.
Seems pretty
Damn.
good.
Okay,
That's my
I've
most
got a
controversial
question
character.
from the gallery, by the way. It says,
I want to hear
and I
Kyde.
quote, "You discuss what you don't want in the game and what can exist in the world you don't go near."
But you don't go near. So I think Into the Wilderness
But-
is saying...
My bad,
You-
thank you.
It's okay. I think what Into the Wilderness is saying is basically the idea of you take people's limits into account and you don't go near them without at least first asking, how close to this can I get? Because for some people, I have a person in my game, for instance, who she cannot handle eye gore, eyes being stabbed, ripped out, etc. She can't handle it. It's a very touchy subject for her. So I just don't go near the eyeballs.
Balls.
Thank you for correcting me on that, by the way.
It's okay. It's what we're all here for.
No,
We're all here to
thank
help.
you. No, seriously, thank you.
Well, you're welcome. So, Kyde, what's been your most controversial character?
She's at home.
Well, I'm gonna go with Mr. Barasa. He was a Nosferatu drug dealer from Jamaica.
A Nosferatu drug dealer. Way to go, dude. Nah, seriously, dude, that's awesome.
Yeah, his net of contacts were pretty much his pushers, the dealers that he was working with. This was in, if I recall correctly, in New York, before it was Camarilla City. And he would pretty much go to all the extent that you would think a drug dealer would. I'm talking about cartel type of shit.
Mm.
That's pretty neat.
No, that's pretty cool, dude. No, that's awesome. So, Thomas, you want to field the question from Into?
Which one?
To retake them, but he
Oh,
was-
that one.
Yeah.
So that one's really interesting. Into the Wilderness is talking about a Changeling the Lost character, which is the Chronicles of Darkness Changeling game. Which, in my opinion, is very, very good. It is better than Requiem.
Controversial.
We'll say that.
To stick with the actual theme.
Controversial opinion. Okay. So the controversial character actually was, according to Into the Wilderness, was the Spring King, who used tools of the True Fae, the Gentry, to actually rewrite people's stories to make their lives a living hell. So in the end, it'd be harder for the Fae to retake them. And basically, he was rewriting people's destinies in an attempt to control their lives to quote-unquote save them.
Which is why Changeling is the most fucked up version of the World of Darkness. Go ahead.
Yep. So then the Spring King got murdered in front of everyone in court, apparently, when they found out what he was doing. But, yeah. I'm going to fuck with your lives. I'm going to say it's to save you, but I'm literally taking away your free will to do it and acting just like a True Fae, which is what they do. The True Fae rob you of your free will in your life, replace you with a puppet made of junk that lives your life for you, and you lose all free will, you lose your life, and when you return, you have nothing to return to. Changeling the Lost is such a fun but very dark game. It is one of the most fucked up. What the hell?
What I've always said about the
We've
I'm gonna-
covered that on more than one occasion.
what I'm is a lot of those games are a hell of a lot of fun to LARP, and I had a lot more fun LARPing that stuff than I did playing at tabletop, especially Changeling. We did LARP that for a long time, and I had a lot of fun with that. Basically, I got to be the Autumn Court. Yay!
Yay!
So,
Yay, team. I would wonder what
No.
Victor would have to say about that, but okay.
Eric, Pete, what's your guys' most controversial characters?
Oh wait, whoa! I pick one.
Yep.
That would have to be
I know
my
you have a
original.
few.
That would have to be my original changeling character.
Okay.
My LARP character that I had to stop playing because I creeped everybody out.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I was a chronic masturbator.
By the way,
was I there for that?
What?
By the way, New Wave PTSD the game.
That's Changeling the Lost is PTSD the game.
No shit.
What about you?
Oh
Pete? What was
my
your most
God.
controversial character? Eater.
Listen, Victor's been on the show too many times. Changeling is the absolute darkest version of the world of darkness. It
Hater.
is. I don't
So,
give a
Peter, what
shit.
was your most
Even
controversial
Changeling
character?
isn't that bad.
Eater.
Peter.
Yes.
Most controversial character, go.
You know, Gunslinger Tremere, to be honest. I tend to
Why?
go with the firearms theme
Why is that controversial?
because most Tremere are known for their thaumaturgy. Did you see that? I just...
It's a form of controversy.
I love how
Same
Peter says the
character.
most tame.
Yeah.
Yeah, no.
It's a joy. It's amazing.
I kind of feel bad. I used to
I
feel
know,
like he was a
right?
really badass character. Now it feels like he was a puppy.
I'm going to shoot you in the face. And that
like-
seems to be my theme for some weird-ass
I
reason.
personally liked how Peter started off the show as what and then after the vodka has started going on and on.
But
Right.
I'm going to be honest here.
Now,
No,
now I
heads
know what
up,
I
y'all.
sound like when I'm
Now
drinking
that,
beer
now
on
that
the show.
my co-host reminded me of what's going on.
Though I do have to wonder, Ken, what was your most controversial character? You asked the question.
Eric was the ST for my most controversial character.
Yeah.
My most controversial character was a Malkavian with a split disorder. And he had two separate character sheets. His primary was a gay porn star with lupus. And
Oh,
That's fucking funny, dude.
the personality switch came at the point of climax to where he turned into a homophobic trucker.
Oh, shit.
Holy shit.
shit, dude.
And so, in one point, the porn star had presence, had a bunch of social traits, and then the gay porn star basically, or the gay trucker had a bunch of points into potence. And essentially, because he was the dominant individual in that you were down several traits for being unguarded, and you would catch like a potence 4 punch to the back of the head. Because
Weird Al has a song.
well, it
About
would be one
gay
of those
trucker.
things where, but his name was Buster Hyman.
I'm sorry, I can't.
I know, right?
I find
No,
those fuckers
No,
shit funny.
seriously, dude, I'm feeling
No.
it.
Out of character, I'm a straight, regular guy, and so
It's
to go in
not
there
straight,
and
it's
play-
gaily forward.
and then to play an extremely gay porn star, right? Who was borderline, like, it was real bad.
Yes,
There was a
yes, it
voice, and I dressed up and everything. And then, like, at the point of climax, you'd hear a, "What the hell?" And then I opened up to punch you in the
Oh
back of
my
the head.
god.
And they'd be like, "What?" Well, I'm doing this to other players. And we're kind of black boxing the whole thing.
Hmm.
And then to switch back, I'd have to go get blackout drunk. So
Gaily
there's a whole lot of
forward.
social concepts in there that are just all sorts of messed up.
I realize I have no imagination.
Cheryl would actually,
And-
Storm would actually know the
Neither
gaily
of the
forward thing.
personalities
I
knew about
actually
the other one.
won a flaming contest in a gay bar.
I believe it.
Oh.
I do too.
Yep.
But that's actually wow. I love how we have a spectrum of controversial here.
I know,
We have a
look at the
controversial
chat.
of how
This is
of
fucking
stereotypical
crazy.
character types. We have controversial of sexual themes. We have a controversial like the portrayal of homophobia and a gay character in one character. We then have the drug cartel who get into real world underground
That's some
drug
funny
dealings
shit, yo.
and oppressive culture of mob culture. And then we have the ghoul who pretends he's a vampire
Yes!
and was abducted and has Stockholm syndrome with a pedophile Nosferatu. Like,
No,
wow,
my favorite
spectrum.
has
And I
been
have my
a Malkavian
my
who was
my
actually
my changing
impersonating a
character-
Tremere who was impersonating a Toreador.
my when we first the changeling characters when Changeling the Lost first came out or Changeling the Dreaming first came out in LARP. But I was a satyr. His name was Sam the Sleaze.
Mm-hmm.
And he was a older, what I can't remember what they're called anymore, grumps or something like that. Anyway, he would get glamour from people by hanging outside the porn shop begging for quarters, and then he'd go in and jerk off in the booth, and that would be how he and he just really was really good at using the pipes. So after the orgy in the in-game orgy, I was asked to.
No, sorry.
Could I dial it back a bit? Could I dial it back a bit? And I of course asked the question, "Am I being a dick?" And
No.
I got a resounding yes.
No,
And,
no, I'm not feeling it, dude.
I'm like, people are getting a little uncomfortable because you're wearing a trench coat, you just have shorts on, and you have your hand in your jacket the whole time, and you have hair on your palms. And yeah, I actually did that, and so I had to go change, and make another character.
Eric, do you remember the voice for Buster Hyman?
Yes.
Hey there,
Buster Hyman.
I know
He had a horrible
really
list.
awesome day. No, have you guys, the folks who aren't playing the game, and I'm gonna say it's Kyde. Do you know what my character's name is?
No.
Basketball Jones.
Why?
Yeah, even he still gets a giggle.
Basketball Joe.
You know, most Nosferatu have a really out there. Yeah, Basketball Joe. I'm on a Basketball Joe.
Basketball Joe.
Oh shit, dude! I think that's
I love how
the
this
best
has just
character
evolved.
name I have ever come up with.
Well, we got.
And I drive a garbage truck.
How much time do we have left in the show?
We still have
14 minutes.
Hold up.
14 minutes.
Asking him to do math.
14.
Does
Called
anyone
it.
in the audience have a particular
So
controversial
far,
character they want to
I'm
talk
gonna
about?
check on them. Right
They've just been
now.
reacting to us,
Exactly.
which has been
Yeah,
great.
holy shit! Laugh out loud. I think
Like-
Basketball Joe. My mama talking to me, trying to tell me how to live. Dun, 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 dun.
I mean, White Wolf has had its fair share of controversial characters, both for either actual like being really dark and disturbing, or just being really
Way
shit
out of
characters.
line. That's what I've been going for.
Eric?
Because I can't play a fish mount. So I'm going to play a fish knots.
Yes,
There was
Ken.
that one time we both played Blood Brothers and we both did the Klaus thing.
Mm.
And we were both fashion designers. Do you remember that?
Ooh, Silver Flame has a great question.
Go for it,
How,
dude. Go.
how would you help a player push their comfort zone, or help player? So
First of all,
Get them drunk.
Yes. Yes,
well,
you're
yeah,
drunk.
No, and on a serious note with that, first of all, only do that with your friends.
Mhm.
Yeah.
That is why
Right.
also Wraith is a game you only play with your friends.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Because you fuck your sister and you fuck your sister.
Yeah. But basically, it's always a thing of one thing I hate to say like safe word, you know,
No.
but obviously,
No.
Pumpernickel. That's a safe word.
If
There
at the
is
beginning
no
of
safe
whenever
word
you start
here.
a game, you figure out what's completely off limits, right?
And then
Like
don't bother showing up.
and
No.
you just don't touch those specific things. But honestly, if you don't know that person real well, don't push them. Yeah.
Oh, a lot
Yeah.
of the sensitive stuff can also be black boxed. You don't have to
True
actually
that.
go into. You can do the and then the next morning kind of thing, so that you can insinuate that the characters may have had some sort of relation, or that there was some sort of like extremely graphic murder. You can allude to that, and then the next morning he arises and covered in whatever. But without having to like get super visceral with it, because some people aren't comfortable with the super violence or whatever. So you can kind of like work that off as a leave it to the imagination kind of thing if you need to.
Another thing you can do that I have found is really you have to wait for them to come to you and be like, I want to push this. I want to move my goalpost. And that's a really good opportunity. Like, okay, where do you think you want to go? What do you want to tackle? And then really what it is it's a slow progression towards it. And you tell them, if at all you start feeling uncomfortable, you let me know. And then we'll
Yeah.
stop, and then we can start again when you're ready, sort of thing.
Yeah,
Like letting people
that's
get up from the
awesome,
table.
Dude. Yeah, that's
Walk
Yeah,
away.
I agree with that one completely.
Yeah.
Yeah, just letting them get up from the table and walk away if they need to, take a breath,
Mhm.
grab a drink.
Smoke
Just
a bowl.
smoke a bowl, being communicative with one another, because it's a game we're all supposed to have fun,
Yes.
and we're supposed to have respect for each other, and you were supposed to respect your friends, and what you're playing with people, they may not be your friends game zero, but hopefully
But I
as the
assume
chronicle
that
goes
if
on,
you're
you'll all
willing
become
to...
friends.
No, hold up, guys. If you're willing to join us in an over-the-internet game, you have to be comfortable with us and knowing that we're likely to say, my mama talking to me, trying to tell me how to live. Yes. You
Well,
have to
they
get
also
that.
have to be. Well, they also have to be comfortable with my character riding a dude in the chassis of a garbage truck.
Exactly.
Actually, into the wilderness just said something that I normally do. The do a session 0, talking about what's okay to go around, what it's okay to simply exist in the world but no go near, and what's off the table.
Yeah.
I think that always setting bases like what you guys have been saying. Like if it's with your friends, you know exactly how far you can go. Then that's fine. If there's new people, this thing, a session 0, would be the best way to pretty much know what's the limit for some players. Fortunately,
But you
I've never
gotta
had
lay
any of
it out,
those.
dude. You have to lay it out.
Yep. Well, I had a game with friends, one of the Chronicles of Darkness games, but I didn't know if any of them had things, so I asked them, and I got things like there's no vor being eaten alive whole, there's no frogs, no snakes, no hanging, try to avoid suicide, avoid graphic on-to-screen depictions of children being murdered, that sort of thing. Now I was like, okay, I want you to be specific with me, and can I work around these? They said
Nobody
yes.
gave a shit during
I
the
have.
interview with the vampire by embracing a child. Nobody cared.
Oh, plenty of people cared. Well,
Yeah,
in
but they
universe,
didn't say anything.
they didn't say anything.
I mean, they were supposed to be mainstay like individuals, weren't they? So
Yeah, I mean, again, I mean,
judge your boss for something they do.
yeah, I mean, so, oh yeah, and then there was also no snail babies. That was a fun one.
Snail babies.
So my group came. Yeah, there's an entire story. My group ended up coming across a group of cultists who worshipped a giant snail eldritch abomination, and one of the things the people had to do was give it a virgin every 15 years. So snail babies were a thing, and basically afterwards they were like, never do snail babies again.
I don't give a shit.
I mean,
You don't, but some people do, and I respected that.
No!
Also, to somewhat make up for it,
This
they
is
ended up
why
actually
we
blackmailing the
have
parents
the
into signing over
Chechnya
custody
issue.
of the woman. They ended up actually forcing the parents to give up their adoptive rights to the girl they had sacrificed to the snail god.
I have one more question I'd like to pose. The table is kind of
Please
like an
do.
outgoing thing. What's the most controversial out-of-character thing you've seen that shouldn't have happened in a game?
Yes.
Could have
All
been
right,
handled
I'm
differently?
gonna go first. Back during the day when I first started playing the game, we had an issue at the University of NC State, and some girl got raped a building away. Not even in the building we were LARPing in, but a building away. They decided that we were satanic and we could not play in their
House.
Thank you.
That's pretty
So,
sucky.
why should we care now? Because somebody gets offended
That's
about
not the
some
question.
rape that never happened.
That's not the question.
Yeah, that
That's
wasn't
not the question.
I was talking about
Apologies.
like a game you were specifically in.
Never mind, go ahead.
Okay. Eric, you ran a bunch of games. Anything in particular pop into mind?
That's the thing, man. I've run so many fucking games.
Like, we both know this one person, Eric,
Mhm.
and I think the most, I'm going to say the biggest dick move I think I've seen out of character is in the old Met system, you could bid traits against people, right? So if you're Nosferatu, you could bid that you're, ugly or something, because they're ugly and it's a social situation, they're down traits. This individual, who shall go unnamed, was having an out-of-character, in-character issue with another player, and she happened to be a bit overweight. And so he thought it would be humorous to bid that she was flabby, and flabby, and flabby, and flabby, and flabby,
Oh,
and
yeah.
flabby,
Oh,
and flabby, and
No.
flabby, and he kept going till she cried.
Hmm.
Right?
No.
So that sort of stuff can happen. And if you're running a game, I feel like it's something that if it's a big game, like a big LARP, it's something that you need to maybe keep in mind that can happen and you may have to address at some point in time. But
Yes,
I mean,
I
that,
do
for
remember
me,
how
I
you
think
addressed that.
probably the biggest dick move I think I've seen.
Well, how the
That
hell do you
sounds
top that?
Right.
Sorry.
I don't think you can. I mean, I haven't seen one, but I haven't gamed, and honestly, in a whole lot of sessions, unfortunately. I mean, as ST, none of my players have come to me and said I did anything too far or anything.
Yeah.
So the only one I know is I had to boot a person from one of ours because I was fairly certain he was cheating on his rolls, and his character was purposely derailing the story. But eventually, I stepped in and I'm like, you're making other people uncomfortable. They're not having fun. I need you to leave and not attend anymore.
Right. But I mean, that's also controversial, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because
I mean,
that disrupts the core fundamentals of the game. So
I do remember having to ask that player to leave, if I remember correctly.
I think there was a couple instances where he had a bit of a drinking problem, and I think he might have been drunk at that time, and I think you did ask him to leave. And to not come back till he could not show up sober, you know what I mean?
Right.
Because there was a good, 30, 40 people in that LARP?
Yeah. Yeah.
Damn.
Sometimes
And,
60. Yeah.
yeah, and so it was a huge LARP. It was on a university campus where it's not okay to, it was in the Union Hall where we were able to get access through the gaming center from people who were attending the college. And for a large group like that, there's only so many people who can run the game, and there's going to be pockets of things happening behind the scenes. And I feel like that might be a rare exclusion because it's not like you're going to have four people at a table and one's going to turn to the other and just be this huge ass. But I mean, they might, but
It can happen.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's a little different when the group is large enough to where there's pockets of cliques.
Yeah. No, that's
And,
completely true.
we actually had to invoke the Inigo Montoya rule,
Yeah.
where you can't change the name of your character. You killed my father. Prepare to die. Where
The
there's
next
just
character
vengeance
is
rolls.
completely different and have nothing to do with him.
Yep. Couldn't pick the same clan.
I was remembering a few years ago when I had the same people, the same number of people that I always played with. They decided to invite two of their friends, and they were well, the typical person that you don't want in your group. They would try to kill the characters. They would just mess everybody up. They were always trying to find a way to derail the story or to try and mess with the other characters' actions. And in general, it was like becoming stressful for everybody else. And they didn't like it when I told them you have to stop this shit because you're just fucking with everybody else. They don't like this crap. They're like, well, if you don't like it, I just won't come here anymore. And I'm like, well, feel free to never return, and you're no longer welcome in my house. And after that, everything just went back to normal. We were playing fine.
I think one of the lessons to learn from that is that if you are going to be running a game, you have to be able to stand up for your players and that sort of thing, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the big things about, storytelling, really big LARPs like that, is that you enter in a different kind of situation where you don't always have that ability to have a session zero or know what everybody can do and know what everybody's going to piss everybody off. And a lot of times it's end up you got to go around putting out the small fires to make sure it doesn't turn into an inferno.
Mm-hmm.
And being diplomatic, and there are very, very few times I have ever asked a player to outright never come back. And those times that I have, it was really necessary. And I'm glad that those times I can count on. I can't even count on a hand. Because most of the time, if people are confronted by saying, "Hey, you're being a dick," can you not do that? Most people will say, "Don't even realize it," and that's like the majority of people. And people that do realize that they're doing it, or are doing it on purpose, don't really tend to stick around because they're dicks anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I guess what it boils down to is again, don't be a dick. Or if you're gonna be,
that's the golden rule of life.
Yeah.
Don't be a dick, and then call people out when they are being one.
Exactly.
That would be the silver rule.
There's a little caveat to that. People are playing monsters. They're going to be playing things that they personally don't deal with on a day-to-day basis. They're not this kind of individual, so they may not handle it in the way that would be perceivably normal. So if they're playing a character who's going to be rude, they may not handle it the best because that's not who they are as a core person. And I think that's where a lot of the "I didn't realize it" kind of thing comes from. So
that it does.
That a lot of people in your games won't have bad intentions. That they'll just
take things too far.
Yeah, that'll be most of what you deal with, I think. And that's what gets you demonetized.
Yeah, if we weren't already demonetized, we are now.
Right. Pete, you still with us?
I don't feel well.
Okay.
I'm about to have a seizure.
Okay. You take care of yourself real quick. I'll end the show, man.
I'm headed to the bedroom. I'll wait
Hey,
until I
what's
end the show.
No. All right.
It's almost over.
Yeah,
anyway,
with that,
so.
Thanks everybody who did show up. Eric has some last words.
Alrighty. Well, we've had a pretty wow. We're going over about 3 minutes or so,
Oh yeah.
but man, this has been a really interesting show. I mean, I've really liked hearing Into the Wilderness's point of view there. Some really good stuff there. What do you guys think, man? Think this was productive and anything else dealing with the kind of stuff that everybody hates to talk about, but every now and then you just have to.
Well, I learned a thing or two of how I'm not evil enough, and I have to try harder.
So I'm gonna go around and everybody get a little last little bit in. Thomas, you got a little last thing you want to say?
In the end of the day, no matter what issues come up, let's all just remember each other is human. Let's all just remember we're playing this game to have fun, and let's do our best to acknowledge each other's humanity, have fun, and not be dicks to each other.
I'll drink to that.
All right, Kyde.
Well, basically, it's that. Just learn to be tolerant. If there's something you don't like, don't touch it. If you want something to be present, then bring it over. And just, I want to send a shout out to my men, to my boy Zero, and my editor chick Kels, and in general, all of you rule. You guys are awesome. I'm glad I was here tonight.
Right on. Mr. Kim?
I think I would just like to leave off with it's okay to explore what kind of characters there are out there. Everybody has experienced or seen different things. There's been atrocities throughout the world. And I think that a part of living through those or experiencing those as a secondary character allows you to gain an appreciation for the real suffering that people have actually gone through or the real struggles. And I think it's a big reason why a lot of people do it. And you shouldn't be too afraid of it, but understand that there is a limit and when to pull back. That's really it.
All right. Good one, man. I couldn't have said that one better myself from all you guys. Well, Pete's kind of having a couple of different health issues going on, but we'll get the stream stopped and everything else. I got him on the phone on the other side. But in the meantime, I want to thank everybody for coming and stopping by. We've had a really good amount of people coming in and out, and people in the chat. We appreciate you guys coming out all the time. We appreciate, hearing us kind of finally get this show on, because we've been trying for about, I don't know, about a month now to get this show going. And just, it's almost been a technocracy episode. So, yeah, I know. I'm glad I can say that now. But I want to thank all our guests, and on behalf of Pete and myself, I just want to say thanks a lot, and we'll see you guys in 2 weeks. All right. Thanks a lot.
Have a good one, guys.
Totally.
Good night.
Bye. Love you. Bye-bye.
Okay, lady, I love you. Bye-bye.
Elevator, go down the hole.
Yep. Kiss yourself. Kiss yourself.